Welcome.
Cool.
We're just giving it a
Right.
couple of minutes while
Now
a
we'll
few
start
people
in a
come
second.
in
Maybe
and then
just
we'll
do the
get
admin, or do you want us to do the admin, Kirsty? Yeah, so we're
No,
gonna.
I'll do that. I'll do
Okay,
that.
cool.
Yeah, no worries. All right, let's get going. So, welcome and thank you for joining today. Today, we're going to be talking about asset map frameworks that elevate engagement. So, let's start with what's on the agenda for today. We're going to start with how you introduce asset map to clients and data gathering. So, of course, that means we're talking about sample maps, stencils, and discovery. We're going to talk about how you can elevate engagement with frameworks. So we're going to be going through the 5 whys, the 4 frames, the 6 L's. We're going to look at keystone habits for success. And lastly, we're going to cover drafts, which is the new feature that was launched last week. From a housekeeping point of view, we are recording this session, so we will share that with you afterwards. As you can see, we've got Gary and Benny on the line. They're here to answer any questions you have during the session. So please, we want to make it interactive. Post your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. We're also going to run a couple of polls as we go through the process this afternoon, sorry. We're going to run a couple of polls to see what your views are, get your insights throughout that process. Okay, afternoon, there we go. All right, so we're going to start off with a poll. I'm going to launch it now. If you could just take a minute to just work through the different options and select the one that most aligns with you. So how has the discovery interview most added value to your practice? I'll just give you a couple of seconds there, maybe a minute. I know there's a lot to read, but if you could just select on the screen now. So the different options there is as an input into a client's data collection process or sense check for existing clients. Are you using it as part of your digital marketing campaign or as a tool to refresh good relationships or reactivate certain client engagements? Yeah, I'll give it another minute. There we go. Okay, some responses coming in now. We'll share that now at the end of the poll. Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to share the results. So most answers is around as an input into new client data collection process. So that's, we see that clients are using it for that. Also, some using it as a component of digital marketing and to refresh good existing relationships with clients. So thank you for sharing that. As we go through it now throughout the session, just think about how you are using it, or if there's other opportunities in your practice to use some of the methods we're talking about today on how you can incorporate discovery into your process in different ways. So let's get into sample maps, stencils, and discovery. So the question we get asked a lot if we talk about sample maps is, how are my peers using sample maps? And maybe start off with, what is a sample map? And the idea behind that is to create an example map for clients. So an example that your clients can relate to. And what I mean by that is, if you deal mainly with business owners, then you want to create an example map that speaks to a business owner. Or if you're working a lot with families, then you want your sample map to speak to families and be a sample map for a family. And there are different ways that planners are using sample maps in their practice. The first way is to introduce asset map to a new client, whether that's a new client for you or an existing client that you haven't taken through the asset map process yet. You can use a sample map to introduce it to them. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. It's also a great way to introduce your value proposition, to position the discovery process, and even incorporate it into your website as part of your marketing. So why is it that a sample map is a great way of positioning asset map for the first time with a client? The reason for that is that it sort of removes that intimidation factor of seeing your own map for the first time. By first taking a client through an example or a sample map, you can talk through the experience the client is going to go through without that feeling of it's my map. So showing it from another client's perspective. And how that's used in practice is I'll start by talking through what process you as the planner took that client through. So you could start by saying, first we identified all the people that are important to that client, showing all the people at the top of the map. and talking through why they were important to that client. Or we ask the client, who would be impacted by the financial decisions that you make? Let's make sure all of those people are on the map. By doing it like this and taking the client through it like that, through that sample map, they're starting to relate it to themselves. So the client then starts asking themselves, who are the people impacted by the financial decisions I make? Who are the people that are important to me that I need to share with my planners that they understand this is who's important to me? And then working through the process you took these clients through as part of that experience. So, these were the gaps that we identified, or this client had a specific investment that they didn't know that much about. So we shared a bit more about what that means for them. Again, throughout that process, the client is relating it back to their own personal circumstances around, oh, I never thought about that. That's potentially a gap for me as well. Or I should share that. I also have an investment like that, which I'm not really sure what that's for. So you're taking the client through the sample process and experience that you took another client through, but by doing that, you sharing with the client what's going to be expected of them, what you would like them to share, what that process is going to look like for them. So again, if you have existing clients that you haven't taken through the process, a sample map is a great way of just positioning what is the asset map process? Why do we create this picture? What is the engagement that we have from that? Other uses, if you see that script at the top there, that little tag, that just means that if you go into the support center and asset map and you search for script, you'll find more articles and videos about this topic. So if you see that tag throughout this presentation, then you know that's where you can get more information. The other way planners are using sample maps is to position their value proposition to clients. So we know when we sit down with a new client, we typically start by gaining an understanding of who's important to them, what it is they want to achieve. But part of that process is also sharing what our value proposition is to clients. So we typically share a bit about us, a bit about the practice, a bit about, what process we take clients through, and using a sample map to illustrate that to clients visually is a great way of sharing. This is the process I take clients through. I take them through this, we create this picture for you and your family, showing who's important to you and everything you've built up until now, so that we can engage around how we take steps forward. Then we look at how on track you are to achieve the different goals that you have and how we can take steps to progress you along these bars. So again, sample maps are not just for illustrating to the client the process, but also using it as a way to illustrate our value and what we take clients through as part of our engagement process. So best practices for sample maps. First step is to build them. So to create the sample map that speaks to clients that you are working with. And then some good practice is to have a printed copy, keep it on you, whether that's in a briefcase or your laptop bag, have it available so that should you engage with a client or potential client, you've got it there to talk through. This is the process I take clients through. Keep a PDF on your desktop that you can quickly access or open it in a Chrome tab or have it on your iPad. The idea is that you should be able to switch into that very quickly and have a story around this particular sample map that you've got that you can easily talk a client through. This is the process that we take clients through. This is what we did with this client. This is how we moved them forward. Because you never know when you'll have an opportunity to talk to a new client about what you do. Okay. Then if we move on to discovery. So we know discovery is our digital data gathering process, but it's also used in lead generation and mass engagement. And we're going to talk a little bit about how our peers or how other planners are using discovery. So the first step, if we think about discovery, we've got the outbound link. And in here, this is the link that's the personalized link that we send to a client. If we're sending it to a particular client and we want to create a personal link for them. How that's used in practice is that first meeting early engagement. We want to send that link to the client prior to that first meeting so that when we sit down with the clients in that initial session, we have an understanding already of who's important to them and what are the things that they've built up until now. But it's also used a lot, and we see this as practice, where you can use it for under-engaged clients. So if you've got existing clients that maybe you did limited interactions with or limited transactions with in the past, it's a great way to re-engage those clients. So, I've brought this into my practice. I want to create this picture for you, pairing it with a sample map. So sending the client the sample map. There's a great acronym, says WIIFM, what's in it for me? Using a sample map to illustrate to a client, this is what I want to create for you. It won't take you more than 15 minutes. Would you go through the process so we can create this picture and start engaging from there? Also seen in practice, it's used, if you take over clients from another planner or take over a book of clients, it's a great way of sharing something new with those clients and re-engaging with them, getting more understanding. It's about understanding more of what they have and who's important to them. That's on the outbound side. On the inbound side, great uses for this is if you do seminars or webinars or any sort of presentations to groups of people. Post that engagement or interaction. You can send the inbound link as one email and say, let's organize your financials. That's a great way of seeing who is taking it seriously, who wants to take that next step, and then engaging with them and getting a bit of an understanding of where they're at. Marketing campaigns. We're seeing this more and more and more, where planners are including it in social media campaigns, incorporating it into their websites. We also have a client video. It's a minute long and it just talks around, what is an asset map and talks about organizing your finances. We see planners using that video. We've got a UK one specific for the UK. So please, if you'd like to have a look at that or think about embedding that into your website, just pop a note in the chat. We'll take a note and share that with you after the session. And you can incorporate that in your online engagement and digital marketing campaigns, including it on your website, and the same for sample maps, putting a sample map on your website, including the link, including the video, driving clients to that site to say, this is how the process we take clients through. Let's take the next step. Business cards, whether you use printed business cards, and I'll show an example of this in a minute, or digital business cards. Discovery now comes with a QR code that you can download. You can incorporate that into your business cards, share that with clients. Clients can then share that with friends, relatives that they have, that they can simply scan in that QR code and go through the discovery process. And then the last use that we see, not as often, but I think this is a use that will grow over time, is a fact find, using it live with a client, using the discovery live. And why this is powerful is if you having that first meeting with a client, you haven't, been able to gather any data prior to that, actually taking them through the discovery together, because it's a wizard and it has sort of boxes, on the page that the client selects. It allows them to tell you information they may not have shared before, or they may not have known that you need that information. So just seeing a block that says any loans or liabilities, the client can then say, well, actually I do. Let me share that with you. So we always say, no matter who you send discovery to, you always find out something new through every discovery that you send out, whether that's a person that's important to the client that we didn't know about, or an investment or product that they have that we weren't aware of, or even a goal, something that's worrying them that we weren't previously aware of. So these are the different ways you can use discovery to gain more information and insight into where your clients are at. Okay, this is an example of including the QR code on your business card that you can share with clients and they can share. And here's an interesting example where planners are actually saving that link as an icon on their phone, so that as and when they meet a potential client, they can easily share that, whether that's via WhatsApp, via text message or email, and even saving it as a keyboard shortcut that they can easily distribute. Again, it's about having it available, whether that's a sample map or a discovery, available and easily at your fingertips to share as and when you need to. And there's that tag again. So please, if you want more information on this, you can search in the support center for more articles and videos. Okay, so best practices when using discovery. Firstly, is that what's in it for me? Send a sample map with the discovery. Just for the client to see that picture and see what they're going to get out at the end of the process. It's a great way of encouraging clients to complete it. Secondly, and probably most importantly, is to always mention that it won't take longer than 15 minutes. For clients, we're being asked a lot to fill in information or questionnaires, and there's often this perception that I'm going to be sitting there for hours, spending, lots of time working through this long process. Just, position that right up front. This won't take more than 10, 15 minutes. You can do it on your phone at home and work through that process. And the last point, which is really critical, is if a client does complete discovery, don't immediately send them the map. Book in an engagement with that client because that there's a wow factor in sharing that map and saying, I've heard the things you've filled in through the discovery. I'm reflecting it in this visual for you. But it's also about the engagement. We want to open up conversation and present that map to the clients in a way that we can discuss, uncover, what gaps there are, explore what the client has filled in that discovery process. And we'll cover that a bit more in detail now. But best step is to set up an engagement and work through the map together with the client. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about Discovery Redirect. If you're not aware of that, that is a functionality that allows you to redirect Discovery once the client has completed it to a website of your choice. And a good example of how planners are using that is with their Calendly link or any meeting booking link that you're using. You can redirect Discovery to that page, which means as soon as the clients finish and completed Discovery and they click submit, it'll automatically route them to that calendar link where they can then book and schedule time with you for that engagement. It doesn't have to be a booking link though. You can redirect them to a website or a web page on your website. But if you would like to use the Discovery Redirect, please just again pop it in the chat and we'll get that set up for you. Okay,
Just before
stencils.
you jump off,
Power in
Chris.
Sorry? Okay,
No,
you
just
want to
before you
add
jump
thoughts?
on. Yeah, I just
Yes.
wanted to I was racking my brain now. I know we had a nice acronym for what the sample map and the stencils deliver. And that acronym I realize is PEDI, like pedicure, PEDI.
Yes.
And I just love what you were saying because I think that the four things that those two opener tools bring to the relationship is the P is for opening up new possibilities. So clients tend to put us in a box and tend to put themselves in a box. And I think the moment you show them a sample map, it just breaks down the boundaries of that box and gets them thinking a lot more freely and openly about what are the opportunities that you can explore in the engagement together. The E is for empathy. So I think that showing that empathy to your client just gives your client that sense of like, like things are going to be okay. This is not the interrogation that I expected. The D is for demonstrate, and I think you explained that nicely with demonstrate your value proposition. And the I is for intimidation. So, and I think we underestimate how intimidating the financial planning process can be. I think we often liken it to going to the dentist. If the dentist could be a little bit less intimidating, we might go a little bit more frequently. But that's a nice, quick little acronym
Thanks, Gary.
to share. Cool.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And then, stencils and the power and placeholders. So stencils, as we know, gives you the ability to create templates that you can then apply to a client, again, to what Gary said, to uncover more information, to do that with empathy as well, but to see what else are we missing? What are the gaps that we can fill? So you can create as many of these stencils or templates in your profile that you like. And there's some key benefits for stencils. The first one is it allows for quick capturing. And what I mean by that is, if you apply a stencil and you've got all the blocks there, you're really just personalizing it for a client. So it just makes that capturing step a lot quicker. But more importantly, it opens up conversations. It gives us a way of introducing new topics to a client by saying things like, people like you typically have a picture that looks like this. Can we work through that together? it helps uncover opportunities, and uncover more information from the clients. Because if they're looking at the map and they see a block there with the £1 in it, they have something in their block, they want to share it with us. We can use it to uncover and fill gaps. And of course, that introducing new conversations. What are the things we can do to elevate and take a step forward? So the best practices with stencils is to start off by creating the stencils to suit your clients. So again, if you're working, a lot with specific type of clients or pre-retirement clients, to really build out that pre-retirement stencil that you have in your profile already by adding the blocks that you want to talk about, adding the gaps that you want to ensure clients don't have, and you use that to enable conversation. Another key point with stencils is that if you include notes in your stencil, so in any of the financial blocks, any notes that you include in there, when you apply it to a client, those notes will be applied as well. And how planners are using that is either to add notes specifically about a financial. Here's the key things to know about an ISA, as an example, that they can then apply and it's incorporated in the notes. But another key benefit is to use it to remind yourself, these are the questions I want to ask about this particular thing. I want to ask, is the will in place? I want to ask, are the beneficiaries up to date? You can use the notes to put in those questions. When you apply it to the clients, it'll be there. But probably the other layer to that is using stencils to delve deeper, to unpack more. And where we've seen great examples of that is if you build stencils for other entities, so not just for individuals and members, but building stencils for a business, building stencils for a trust. What are the things that we want to uncover when talking to a client that is a business owner that has a business? And what we've seen in practice with that is that often we uncover not only opportunities or gaps that need to be filled, but risks, that are highlighted because we gather more information from the client. So, um, on your side, just start thinking about what are the stencils we would like in our practice, and start building those, for you and your team that you can apply to clients. We are also at the moment building up a library specifically for the UK. And obviously, with you guys being our first users there, we would love your input. So please, if you've got any suggestions, whether that be, it would be really great to have a business stencil or a stencil for medical practitioners, please share those ideas with us and we'll build up that library as we go along. Okay. So the action steps from this section is consider incorporating discovery into your marketing strategy. And whether that's your websites, email signatures, business cards, etc., how are you going to bring that in and incorporate it? Build the sample maps that your clients can relate to. So build at least one that you create, that you can speak to, that you can take a client through. And then build the personalized stencils for your practice that will open up conversation and open up engagement with your clients. All right. Okay, the next section we're going to go into is the framework. So interpreting asset map reports and what are the different frameworks that we can use. So I'm going to try the poll again and obviously a different question this time. If you can, I'm going to launch that now.
While you're launching, Kirst, I mean,
Yeah.
the thought that popped into my head, I think it's all good and well to sort of be saying, but man, I've done this so many times. I don't necessarily need a reminder of what I need to collect from the client. And if I just think of something that I do really frequently, like leave the house, I know that I need three things, and I'm pleased it's not the pandemic anymore because I used to need four things. But I need my wallet, I need my cell phone, I need my house keys, and I used to need a mask. And unless I deliberately stop at the front door and I say, okay, what do I need before I leave the house? And I go through that little checklist of stuff, I end up at the shops without my wallet, or I end up somewhere without my cell phone. So I think it really is a powerful process to introduce into the client engagement because it helps us to be thorough. Sorry, go for it.
For sure. Okay, I've launched the next poll. It's what aspects of your existing client engagement are you most excited to progress? I mean, the top ones coming through now is goal identification or identifying new opportunities for providing advice. This is an interesting poll. It seems to be quite split between the different things. I'll share that with you all now. But if you can take a minute and just cast your votes, what aspects of your existing client engagement are you most excited to progress? I'll give it another second, two. Okay. All right, so we have a one that is leading. Okay, I think I'm going to end that. There we go. And just share the results. So you should be able to see it on your screen now. So a few saying goal identification, understanding better what makes your clients tick, but overwhelmingly it's identifying new opportunities for providing advice. So that's awesome to hear. We're going to work through these different frameworks now, and hopefully that opens up some of those opportunities. So the frameworks we're going to be working through is what we call the 5 whys, the 4 frames, and the 6 Ls. And the first one is the 5 whys. Now, you might recognize the person on the picture here. His name is Detective Columbo. It was a TV series in the 80s. And I'm going to share a little bit. It was in the 5 whys, or this framework was inspired by this television show. And I'll share a little bit about what the show's essence was. But Detective Columbo was obviously a detective, and he would do the interrogation of criminals. And he had sort of a disheveled look, and he wasn't extremely intimidating, and mostly through the interrogation the perpetrator would think, okay, they've gotten away with the crime. And then as he'd be walking out of the room, he would turn around and say just one last thing, and typically that question would catch the person so off guard they would end up inadvertently admitting to the crime. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have the same intention with this framework, but it's inspired by that. And the idea behind this is to ask 5 power questions when working through the map with the client. And the reason behind that is to get a better understanding of the clients, how they make decisions, how they built up what they have today. And so you put the map in front of the client and think of 5 questions that you can ask them. Now, as someone who's engaged in coaching, they often say, don't use the question why, because clients can get quite defensive with the question why. So I'll change it to tell me more about. But the key is to ask with curiosity, with genuine curiosity to understand more about the client. And if I can use an example of when you walk into someone's house for the first time, you might notice a trophy and ask them more, tell me the story behind this, or a piece of art or a picture. And this is the same concept. We want to ask with that same intention of looking at the map and working through, tell me more about the people that you've listed here. Explain, their connection to you. Or tell me about this rental income that you're receiving from this property. Well, maybe the client inherited that from a parent or a grandparent. By just asking these questions from a place of genuine curiosity, we get an insight into what's important to the client. What are the decisions that led them to where they are today? And how can we use that understanding in taking them forward? So the idea behind this framework is to ask about the things you see on the map. Tell me more about this. Is there a specific intention, or have you earmarked this particular investment for something? Or tell me why you chose this, to go to have this insurance. What was the thinking behind that? And we gain a great understanding of how the client's journey has been up until where they are today, but also that we can use that in how we plan going forward. So the intent is to ask with genuine curiosity. The second framework
Chris,
is the...
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm jumping in again.
No, please, jump in.
No, I love it. And, the thought it brings to mind for me is that we need to be careful of assumptions. So I love your analogy of walking into a house, and you could say the same for a Zoom engagement. And I've got a bicycle behind me. And I think a lot of people have assumptions about the bicycle behind me, but they don't ask. So the assumption is, oh, okay, I'm obviously an avid cyclist, and I obviously, spend a lot of time on the road, and that's probably the assumption. and I get that a lot with people saying, oh, I, they don't ask. So they don't ask, tell me more about it. And if they did ask for me to tell them more, they'd find out that I haven't cycled in a year and a half, and I'm feeling really ashamed of it, and blah blah blah
Artwork
blah
now.
blah. But just that assumption, which we all take into our engagements with us. So I think having a process to actually mitigate our own assumptions that we would see on a map, I think is really powerful.
And if I can just compliment
Hello.
or add to that, I mean, Gary, the point you also subtly making is that things change over time. So we might have been curious and learned something a while ago, but it doesn't mean it's still the same. And so definitely it's worth checking in.
I love that because it's so, we say when you look at an asset map, when a client say completed discovery, you immediately get insights. But you're 100% correct. A lot of that is based on assumption as well. We look at the map and we get insights and we assume certain things, but just asking the clients and opening up that conversation really helps to remove that. So the four frames, I love this framework as well. It's the idea that, if you look at a certain picture, if you look at a map in this instance, you'll see different things. And we always say if you have two people in a practice look at the same asset map, you'll get two different insights, two different things will come up for them. And the idea behind this framework is to say, we all have specific lenses on that we're using when looking at a map, and that's why we see things the way we do. But if we can apply different lenses or different frames of reference and look at the same map through that different lens, will we get different insights, or what are the different insights that we'll get? And the four in this example is to, first one being insurance. If I look at a map with that insurance lens on, the things I'm going to, or if I was an insurance specialist, for example, looking at a map, I'm going to focus on, things like the ratio of their income to the life cover that they have to see, is that enough? I'm going to be looking for gaps in insurance. Have they protected their assets? But if I look at the exact same map, but from a legal lens or using a legal lens, I'm going to look for different things. I'm going to look at the structure of the map. Is what's in the client's name, should it be there? I'm going to look at what should be in the business, what should potentially be in the trust. I'm going to be looking for things like, is the will up to date and checked? Are the beneficiaries up to date? And in the same breath, if I'm looking at it from an investment lens and focusing on that, I'm going to look for different things again. I'm going to be looking at, what sort of retirement funds versus discretionary and liquidity does the client have? I'm going to be thinking about what the underlying funds are. Are they targeting the return they require? Are they achieving that? And the same if I look at it from a tax point of view. There I'm going to be looking for things like, is the client taking advantage of, tax-friendly structures like an ISA? Are they properly structured from a tax point of view? Can we do things differently? So this framework is all about looking at the same map, but applying these different lenses to see what different insights comes up for you and what different things can we do. And it works similarly in, for you as the planner, but another way of using it is bringing the team in your practice to say, when you look at this map, what do you see? Typically in a practice, we all have different strengths that we're bringing in, and we'll see things differently. So we'll have different insights looking at the same map. So we always encourage as a team to have a look at the map together and see what comes up for you, but then again to use this framework and apply it to the client to see, is there different insights that you can gain by wearing these different hats or looking at it through these different lenses. Another great example of how planners are using this framework is not only from a planning point of view to make sure we're covering all of our bases, we've checked everything from each point, but it's a great way of sharing with the client what is the process that we go through as part of your planning. And an example of that is the planner said, I've put the plan in place for the client. It's time for review, but everything is on track and everything is, still going where it's meant to, the client's on track to achieve what they're meant to achieve. What do I talk about in the next review? And using this framework to just share, from where we started, we looked at the insurance point of view. These were the gaps that we filled over the last few years. These are the things we identified and changed. We've looked at it from a legal point of view. This is the structuring we changed to make sure you structured correctly from that perspective. We're managing and maintaining these investments to ensure that you continuously target the return that you require. And we've optimized from a tax point of view. So just working through the map and the journey you've gone through with the client across these 4 frames lets the client understand and feel the value that we're adding. And we know that planners are doing this, anyway, going through these different insights and working through that. But it's just a nice framework to share that with the client, to engage with the clients around this is the things that we're doing. Okay. So that's that. So again, let's examine, let's work through it and unpack from that different frames perspective. So the last framework we're going to work through today is the 6 Ls, the financial fire drills. You would have seen this a little bit in signals that we released, but the idea behind this, if you think of a fire drill, everybody knows this is the process we're going to follow. When something goes wrong and there's a fire, this is who you call, this is the steps we're going to take. And the idea is, can we apply that same thinking to a financial plan? What are the 6 things that could potentially derail the client financially should these events occur? And can we work through that with the client to unpack what is the plan that we have in place for each of these things? So the first one is liquidity. If something happens and we need access to liquid funds quickly, do we have a plan in place? Do we have the ability to access liquid funds or, short-term credit that's not too expensive that we can access if we need to? What if there's a disability in the family? Somebody becomes disabled. Do we have a plan in place for that? The same for if there's a loss of life. What is the plan? Is the will in place? Is everything documented in terms of what that looks like? If there's a long-term care need, so somebody becomes ill, what about longevity? If we live longer than we expected, do we have enough to make sure we can, sustain our lifestyle and the income that we require? And the last one is legacy. And that looks at things like, is all the documentation in place, from the will to the beneficiaries to our last wishes? Are our assets protected? Have we taken the steps throughout them? And again, how this framework is used in practice is even if you have already gone through all these steps and put that plan in place, it's a great conversation sitting with the clients and the map saying, let's work through it to make sure the client understands that these plans are, we do have a plan, this is the process, and this is what we're going to do. So actually working through these frameworks with the client, with the map in front of them, saying there's a liquidity issue, what are we doing? Well, we're accessing these funds. There's a loss of life. What are the steps going to be? Well, it's X, Y, and Z. So using this framework in that engagement, again, letting the client understand and be on the same page with where we're going and what the plan is for each of these events. In addition to that, we brought out signals late last year. And what that does is it takes all the information that is in the client's asset map. So it understands, what their ages are, what sort of income they're earning, comparing those ratios to the cover they've got in place, to the retirement funds that they've put aside. And it gives us an indication of whether the client or the family is red, amber, or green across these 6 events. So we can easily see, here's a flag, there's a problem in one of these areas. Let's delve deeper through target maps to uncover, is there really an issue? Do we have some sort of mitigation, and how do we move forward on that one? So if you haven't had a look, please take a look at signals and how you can incorporate that into your process. In addition to that, we also have a report. If you go into any household and asset map and you go to that reports tab, you can download the 6L report. It's a nice way to engage with the client through these 6 events and just sort of tick off, yes, we do have a plan in place, or it requires modification, and just jot down, what are the steps, what is the process and the plan that we have in place for that. Again, just reiterating with the clients that there is a plan and these are the steps that we will take in that event. I like this framework. It's actually the framework used by radiologists. And It's called the ABCs. And the idea behind it is you go through each one of these steps where you look at alignment and joint space and bone texture and cortices and then soft tissue. But what I really liked about this framework is that there's a principle behind this that says, if you start going through a framework and you get to step 1 or 2 and you identify a particular issue, don't stop working through the framework there. So we have a tendency to go, okay, well, here's the gap or the issue that I need to address, and then we don't work through the rest of the framework. So the idea behind this is you have to go through all of it to make sure you don't miss anything. But it doesn't mean that if you identify 5 things, we have to do all of them today. We can then have a prioritization discussion. But the idea is to work through the framework to identify everything. And then here we talk about every meeting is a client review meeting, or rather, every meeting is an engagement with the client. And if you think about review and we think about all these frameworks we work through now, how do they all fit together? How do you put them all into a review meeting or a engagement with the client? And the key thing with review, if you think about it, even in the name, is it has the tendency to sort of look back and say, well, we're reviewing the funds or we're reviewing the products. But by using Asset Map in those engagement meetings, we can start the conversation off by saying, let's check in with where we're at today. Instead of just looking backwards, let's see where we are today, get onto the same page with that, and how we move forward. So it's changing every engagement to stay, let's start by identifying where we are today and how we take a step forward. And here's a visual of how you could potentially fit all of these frameworks in, to that engagement with the clients. But the key points, and you'll find your own, process and way and how you want to bring them in. But the key points we want to share here is that we want to start with that rapport and checking in with where the client is today, asking those questions, asking the 5 whys with that curiosity. And to Gary's earlier point, things may have changed. So understanding what has changed in the client's life, what has changed on this picture before we then take those steps to move forward. So it starts here with rapport, then working through the map, reviewing the members, the incomes, assets, liabilities, working through those 5 whys, then looking at it from the 4 different frames to see are there gaps or changes that we need to make or insights that come out of that, checking in on the 6 L's. What is our plan in place for each of those potential events? Then reviewing target maps to see how on track the client is. And lastly, looking at product suitability and implementation. But the key point here is to not jump straight to the end. Start with, let's get on the same page of where we're at today. So I'm going to pause there. Any questions before I jump into Keystone Habits? Barry, is there any?
Ian had a question to say, can we type in the 6 L's report?
Yes, I'll share that.
Address that.
So we do have an editable version. So please, if you'd like a copy of that, I'll share that with you, Ian. If anybody else on the call wants, please just pop that in the chat and we'll share that after the session. And then you can edit it. Okay. Perfect. All right. So Keystone Habits. So the idea around this process is to say, if I want to start using Asset Map more in my engagements, but with existing clients, what are the different ways I could do that? And this is a process that they started in the US, worked really well in just re-engaging with clients, adding additional value, opening up conversations. And the idea behind it is to create a new practice in your, or a new process or practice in your firm. So start by allocating an hour a week or 2 hours a week to say, I'm going to create 5 asset maps, 5 households asset maps every week. And then once you've created the map, and this would be for existing clients, it may not be time for review specifically, but you create a map for a client that you have. And then apply your advisor intelligence to that. So working through those frameworks, what are the things that we could do differently? What could we fill, change, add? What gaps am I seeing? And what's really great about this process is they'll actually print out the map and write on it. And the idea is not for it to be 10 things, one or two things that we can do for that client that can just elevate their position. Maybe it's one or two things we've been talking about doing for a long time. And just by drawing on the map, we've been chatting about consolidating these investments, or there's this gap we've been chatting about. I think it's time that we work through options there and actually filling that in on the map and then sending it to the client saying, I took the liberty of creating this picture for you and your family. And, we've been chatting about these one or two things. Can we book some time to take a step further? And what they found with implementing this process is that clients immediately, the feeling they get is, my planner understands me. They're thinking about me. They drew up this picture for me. And, we have been talking about that gap, or we have been talking about that change. Maybe now is the time to do it. So I'd really encourage you to try out this process, to block off some time to say, I'm going to do 5 a week, create those households, work through them, ask a team member, what insights they can see, and share that with your clients. Okay. And then to end off today, I wanted to focus on this new feature that we added last week. It's more than just a feature, though. It's a bridge between current financial realities and future possibilities. And this is something that we've had a lot of requests for in the past. So we're really excited to share that. We'll share more information on that as well. But the idea behind drafts is for you to show clients possible future outcomes that they can achieve. One example of that is you could show a client, if you were to retire, this is what the picture will look like. These are the assets that would fall away. This is, that would be replaced by an income. Or, here's the state pension that would come in that event, or your salary would fall away. So you can create the picture of what post-retirement would look like. Or if there's a specific change that you and the clients are engaging around, consolidation or filling of particular gaps, you can reflect that on the map without changing the current picture, but display it visually to have that conversation so the client can visually see what the impact of that change would be. And I'm just going to play this video quickly showing one example of that. But let's say in this example, the client's got these 2 savings accounts, at a bank, and we want to talk around consolidating those and putting that into an ISA. I can start by creating a draft. So clicking on that colorful plus, selecting drafts, select create a new draft, and I can actually name that. And you can create as many of these as you want. So in this case, I can say, let's look at consolidating the savings into an ISA. Once I create the draft, it opens the draft mode, and you'll see there's a watermark at the back. And now I can make the changes that we're discussing. I can show the investments that are going to fall away. I can show the investments that are going to replace that, or I could add insurance, incomes, liabilities, whatever changes that I want to depict. You can reflect that on the page, and you'll see the way it displays shows that it's in draft. If I then close that draft modal by just closing it at the bottom there, you'll see it takes that away completely and the map is unchanged. But now when I'm about to engage with the clients, I can overlay that draft, select from any of my existing ones that I've created, and apply that to the client to show the impact of that change. Now we can really talk through it. I can also generate it as a PDF report that then again has the watermark with the name of the draft and engage with the clients on that. So we're super excited about this new feature because we think it's another step in that advice engagement. When you're sitting in front of a client, you want to visually show them different outcomes that are possible and which are the ones that we're going to work through and how we're going to take that step forward. Yeah.
I love how Adam talks about it. I mean, like he's so passionate about this, and he talks about, uses the analogy of remodeling a kitchen. The person doing that shows multiple options for the client, and I think it's something in financial planning. We tend to try and position the one best or our best solution. But yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting idea to show clients different options and the pros and cons of each.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just being able to see it to make it tangible for a client. I mean, we talk about these different options and, this is what we'll do and that's what we'll do, but to reflect it on the map so the client can really feel, okay, this is what it's going to look like, or visualize those future possibilities, I think is really the game changer here in opening that conversation.
Awesome.
So before we leave off today, I'm going to leave with a challenge. To start by creating 5 asset maps for households every week, whether that's manually or through discovery, building those maps for clients, and even just running one target map for each of those. How on track is the client in any particular event? And then getting someone else in the team to view that map as well, to have a look and share the insights that come up for them, and then to communicate that with clients. So that's, and then just as we wrap up, please, we have time for questions. So please, if you've got any questions or thoughts or insights that you want to add, please do that now. But if you could pop in the chat and say, what are you most excited to implement in your practice following the session today? I'll just open the chats here.
Thanks, Kirst. That was great. I always feel re-inspired working through these frameworks, and I think it's such a powerful way to frame your week and to frame your value proposition to your clients. And I mean, to get through a client base, how do you do it other than one chunk at a time? How do you eat an elephant one chunk at a time? So 5 a week, I love it.
Okay, so Chris has a question. Plans to produce a pulled together target map. Okay, so there is some capability of that already, Chris. If you look at the cash flow graph next to the what it means section, you can see that over time. Target maps is not necessarily just to run for retirement. You can run that for the lifetime of the lifestyle of the client. So say from now till age 100, what are those different needs going to be over that time? What does the client have already that you can allocate to that? And you can actually see that in that cash flow graph to say, this is the requirements over time, and this is how that's being met through what you have already. So we can spend some time on that as well. Yeah, maybe just to if Gary and Ben, I don't know if you want to add to that, but I think the last point I'll make is, please, if there's any frameworks that you sort of say that you want to use more or you want to unpack more, please let us know. Let's book some time together and work through it. Chris, I'd love to work through that with you, so I'll book some time on that one. But please just let us know, and yeah, take it from there.
Excellent.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you for joining us.
Excellent.
Have a wonderful week.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kirsty.
I'm going to end it.
Cool. Let's wrap it up. Yeah, I think what a challenge, like keep on engaging. I mean, the one thing that gets my blood boiling is sometimes we fall into this thing about clients going to maintenance mode. Yeah, and for me, that's the thing that's not healthy, and so that's why I think these frameworks are really powerful to sort of to reinvigorate that. Can't just go to clients in maintenance mode. We've got to keep on adding value, and clients' lives change, as we know.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge.
Those conversations. That's the challenge. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end it now, but thank you very much for joining us today. And
thanks, everyone.